Oh, having a seat today. Hello friends, I'm having a coffee here this morning. I thought you'd like to join me. To be honest, I'm just getting over a cold, been feeling super lousy lately. So I thought today, let's just sit down, hang out, and have a coffee. So last week, I got hit up by a high school teacher who was asking me a few questions on behalf of his students. I thought one of the questions was really cool. It was basically what kind of advice I would give to somebody who really wanted to get into welding. So I thought today, since I'm kind of feeling like trash, we'll just pour a coffee and hang out. And I guarantee that this advice here I'm about to tell you is nothing you are going to hear in a welding school. I guarantee it. Oh, that's good. I drink my coffee black. What do you put in your coffee? Let me know in the comments below. I want to know if you put fancy stuff in your coffee. So as far as this advice that I would offer to somebody who really wants to get into the trade of welding, I had a few people kind of teach me some of this stuff over the years, but honestly, most of this stuff that I'm about to share with you is stuff that I learned from experience myself. So over the course of my career, that's been over 2 decades. That's right, I started welding when I was about 19 years old. I just turned 40, how crazy is that? Over the span of my career, I've had the pleasure of working with all kinds of different people. I've seen a lot of really great workers as well as a lot of workers who were a little less desirable to be around. Shut up, plane. And because we're talking about advice that I would offer somebody who's just looking to get into welding, I really wanted to share a few things that I genuinely wish more people knew when they first started. So for the first one here, there's one dude that comes to mind who I got to work with for a while. I worked with this dude for about a year or so. Let's just call him Tim. Tim was about my age at the time. I was probably like 30, 32 or something. He had a lot of experience with aluminum welding. He had been to school here in British Columbia in Canada and had a bunch of tickets and stuff. And to be completely honest, he was really good at what he did. However, unfortunately, when it came to Tim, there was one problem with this dude. And I've met a few other really similar people to this guy over the years. Some of them my age, even younger, and to be honest, some of them quite a bit older than me. Now, the problem with Tim was that he knew everything. Now hear me out on this one first. Like when I say he knew everything, I mean he knew everything. For example, one day I was setting him up on a pretty tricky job involving a drill press as well as setting up kind of a weird setup for a hole saw. The configuration that we had to do required a few moving parts, some Allen keys and adjustments and stuff. We had to offset the vise in like a weird position. It's kind of one of those jobs where I couldn't just explain it to somebody and then expect them to run off and be able to do it. So I took him aside, we went out and we started putting the thing together. But every time I started to show him something, didn't matter what it was, he would interrupt me and say, yeah, okay, I already know this. Or for example, I was showing some things about the hole saw assembly that was specific to the tooling that we had. He would interrupt, grab the parts right out of my hand at times. He didn't want any advice or anything like that. He just wanted to grab the stuff and figure it out. But seriously, he would like grab the stuff right out of my hand. Now, setting up the vise in this particular way had given many employees in the past a lot of problems. But before I could even explain it or show it to him somehow, he already knew it. Even though when I walked away, I watched him scratch his head a little bit. It didn't quite know how to do it. And while I do believe in giving somebody the opportunity to figure something out on their own, for myself, I take a lot of pride in clear direction. So I was honestly just doing my part to make sure he was good to go. So again, turns out he knew all this stuff already, and honestly, just dealing with someone like that was really unpleasant. And it wasn't just with me. He did this stuff with everybody else too. Shop foreman, didn't matter. Other newbies in the shop, it was really frustrating to watch this dude interact with anyone. So my advice for somebody like this would basically be pipe down and lose the attitude, dude. Or dudette. Working in the trades is a long process. Like I said, this dude actually had some really good experience and he turns out he could actually do a lot of good work, but his attitude absolutely killed everything for me. He only wanted the good jobs in the shop. He didn't want to mess around with any of the grunt work. And when it came to advice, he was not interested in listening to any of it. This dude walked into our shop, which all the people were essentially like family. We'd worked together so long, and he acted like none of us had anything to offer him. Come on, Tim. Speak with your work. I've given this advice to somebody in the past. If somebody's explaining something to you, even if you already know it, instead of cutting off somebody and saying, I know, just keep your head down and keep quiet about it. Speak with the results of the work that you do. Heck, some people might even think you just understand stuff super fast. You might even be able to get at the bigger and better jobs much quicker. If you don't know this stuff, that's completely fine. Just keep quiet, pay attention, learn the small stuff first, jobs, grunt work that nobody else wants to do. I had to do all this stuff for years. Matter of fact, even with like 15 to 20 years of experience under my belt, I would still jump in with newbies all the time and do any kind of grunt work with them to give them proper direction on something. It's a lot of pride I took in trying to be a leader. But if you have skills already, wait for opportunities to show what you know. Don't just stand there with your arms crossed like a dink saying, I know that already. Nobody wants to hire or work with anybody like that. That's honestly the hugest bummer about someone like Tim. He actually could have been a really big help to our shop with the skills that he already had, but because of his attitude, nobody wanted to work with him. Now, for anybody else looking to get into trades, if you walk into a shop with no experience, here is another piece of advice that I would absolutely offer as being one of the most important things that I learned over the years. And this would simply be ask questions. Even if you already know what you're being taught. Like I talked about, if you know it already and you're just keeping quiet about it, ask a ton of questions on the down low just to see how other people think about the job that you're doing. It's a great way to see how other people think about jobs all the time. Somebody might have a completely different reasoning to something, or even show a completely different way of doing something that you hadn't thought of before. That's happened to me a ton of times. Here's one of my favorite things to teach people. If you have a question about your job, go around to different people in the shop and ask them all the same question. A lot of the time, not surprisingly, you'll get different answers from different people. All of them may be a correct answer as far as how somebody else prefers to do something, but kind of seeing how everybody else thinks, you can then kind of cherry pick the best ideas. You can kind of come up with the top 3 best ways of doing any kind of job. It's a really fast way to learn. And then you can basically try everything, see what works best for you. Now, I worked with this dude named Brian back in the day. Shout out to you, buddy. I know you're watching. This dude was absolutely awesome. He definitely knew what he was talking about as far as all the jobs we had to do in our shop. He was a really talented welder. But I remember when I first started working at the shop, he told me his favorite people to train were the people that asked good questions. He truly did not care if anybody had any experience or not. Somebody that was super interested in what was going on and super trainable was all that he needed. It was really, really good advice for me when I first started. I'm paraphrasing how he said it. I think he said about like 480 swear words while he said that. And he basically did it while yelling the entire time. I think he drank like 3 energy drinks at the same time. You get the idea. I miss you, buddy. Now, this next thing is probably one of the most important things I would ever give anybody advice on. And honestly, just to put it simply, be positive. One of my biggest goals when I was growing up was to be one of the better people in the shop, not one of the best workers. In my days of working in the shop, as well as going back to school, I was around some absolute snap shows. I saw people freak out and smash tools, go up to other people, start fights. And honestly, one of the worst things I think anybody can do in a shop environment, and that was blame mistakes on other people. Basically just any way to get out of trouble. Making excuses just to make sure that you stay out of trouble. If I saw anybody in my shop with this attitude, there was no way they're getting the time of day from me. Some of the most respect I hand out to people is to see how they handle things when they make a mistake. If somebody owned it, apologized, and then used it as a way to learn, their cool points went way up with me. If anybody made a mistake and then tried to make up some lame excuses that I didn't want to hear, or even worse, trying to blame somebody else, I'm sorry, you lost me. I'm not interested in helping you anymore. When I started my certification, I walked into welding school, I knew nobody there. When there was a bit of downtime in the shop, one of my favorite things to do was just to walk around and meet people. Basically just check out what they're doing, ask what they're working on, literally just chatting to whoever. Showing interest in what somebody else is doing, maybe even giving them a hand with something, as well as just genuinely being nice and friendly. This is the #1 way that you can show people that you're a good person to have in their shop. The instructors in school were way nicer to me. I was definitely able to climb the ladder at my shop pretty quickly. And both with other students as well as coworkers, I made lifelong friends that I'll probably have forever. And applying this to walking into a new job that you may just have got, or perhaps a new employee who's just joined your shop. Come on, be a pleasant person in a shop to be around. Listen to me. People do not want to work around some spaz. Nobody wants to see anybody throwing tools around or acting like an idiot. And I never wanted any tough guy stuff around my shop. Any good shop I've had the pleasure of being in runs like a family. Inevitably, some kind of problems, mistakes are gonna come up, but people work out these things like adults. As a shop, being able to turn out incredible work, that requires everybody to work together as a team. Even walking into a brand new shop without any prior knowledge or skill, you can still quickly become one of the biggest and most important players on that team. Like I said, and a lot of times it's kind of more the person that you are in the shop instead of the work that you can do. Obviously work your way up to doing better work, you get the idea. I could go on for hours about stories like this. On my channel, I genuinely encourage people to get into the trade. The trade of welding has done so much for me in my life. If you are interested and motivated to learn how to weld or maybe get a job at a shop, I encourage you to jump in head first. Go for it. There's so much that you can learn out there. There's so many cool people that you can work with. Being in this trade has brought me over 2 decades of joy, and I'm actually honestly more motivated on welding than I ever have been before. Go out today, do a random act of kindness for a stranger. My name is Dusty, Phil and Chill. We will talk soon. Peace.